Hi, welcome to Jot Notes, a podcast where we dive into the lives of authors and the world of books. My name is Jenna Green, and I am a YA fantasy author, author of the Imagine series and the Reborn Mark series. Joining me is co host and producer Miranda O, a contemporary chick lit author, author of the Chin Up, Tits Out series. Now, normally, she has the privilege and honor of introducing our guest for today. But I got a little giddy and we may have arm wrestled virtually. And for the first time ever, I won. So I get to introduce our guest for today. So we have Nzondi, or Ace Antonia Hall, the ace of horror. So he'll explain all his names in that. But he is an American urban fantasy and horror author and is the first African American to win a Bram Stoker Award in the novel category. His novel Oware Mosaic won the Bram Stoker Award for superior achievement in young adult fiction. Now, I'm a young adult author, more fantasy than horror, but this is why I got giddy. His latest work is Lipstick Asylum. He told us all sorts of tidbits backstage, so we cannot wait to bring him in. Here he is. Hi and welcome, and thanks for being here.
I am so, I can't even tell you how happy I'm to be here. I am to be here. Thank you, Jenna. Miranda, ever since I was first introduced to your name, I've been an admirer of your work, of your persona. And this is like a dream come true to finally be able to talk to you face to face and to interact with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We are beyond stoked to have you on our show today. I do have to apologize for those who are watching. I'm a little congested today, so I've got the Kleenexes and the lozenges within arm's reach. But we are super stoked to have you in Zondi. I want to dive into this. I want to dive into you specifically. We talked a lot about you before the show. And you explained a lot about your whole path to becoming a writer. But I want to start with you have won awards. And I know I've won one award, Jenna, you've won an award, and I know how that makes me feel. How does it make you feel knowing everything that you've done and all the stuff you've gone through? How does that make you feel in your world of being an author?
It is like the most amazing feeling because all of my life, I've never won anything. Call into the radio stations, raffles, nothing. I've never won anything. And I worked so hard to learn how to write novels, to learn how to write great characters, great plots. I mean, I used to go to Starbucks on Shoop in Woodland Hills, California, literally on the weekends from 5 a.m. in the morning when it opened, and I would stay there till 11 p.m. at night, just writing, 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 writing. And for my peers and for the horror community to recognize my work and to win a Bram Stoker, oh my God, that's like the most prestigious award any horror writer can win in the entire world. Was beyond, like, I still can't believe it. Like, like, pinch me. Am I awake? Am I dreaming? What's going on? So it's amazing, and it's an incredible honor.
It makes your heart feel good, right?
Oh my
And then it kind of makes your head the size of Texas.
God.
Keep
I
your feet
like you say
firmly
Texas. I'm a
planted.
Cowboys fan, Dallas Cowboys fan. So thank you for saying Texas.
Yes. I'd like to say that I prepared that in advance, but it was just fluke. So it was kismet. It was meant to be.
She was about to
Um,
say Quebec and then switched it up.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Texas is always my reference when it comes to like something very big. I don't know why. It might be the whole like meat and barbecue thing that they just love
Woo!
barbecue. I've never been to Texas, so like I don't even know why I use it, but it's just one of those references I always go back to. Let me tangent back to our lane here. Before the show, we were talking about mentors.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the mentors that made the biggest impact leading up to your writing career, because you name dropped some pretty cool people, and then those mentors that were just integral in your success as an author.
You know, like the other parts of the entertainment industry that I tried to get into, um, I never had a mentor or what I call a team ace, a team Nzondi, to really encourage me. And when I got into the horror, the first two authors that I hadn't even written my first line in the novel yet, and I wanted to just kind of expose myself to that world. And I went to a book fair called the West Hollywood Book Fair, West Hollywood Book Fair, WeHo, I think, yeah, WeHo, and I met Heather Graham and Alexandra Sokolov, and right away we hit it off, and they became like my muses, my mentors. I took some of Alexandra Sokolov's classes, and I would email and interact with Heather Graham, and she would give me advice and encouragement. And I got to tell you, I really don't know where I would be if it hadn't been for them. And then I met Robert J. Sawyer on the set of Flash Forward, and he came up to me and introduced himself to me, and he was instrumental in my process. I wanted to go self-publish. I didn't think I was good enough to be picked up by a traditional publisher, and he said to me, "Ace, your writing is really good. You deserve to be published by a published author. I mean, by a publishing company." And I mean, we just did a podcast for the first time together a couple of weeks ago, and he has just been like a huge cheerleader for me and mentor. And between those three individuals, and then there were just so many others that I met along the way, like Linda D. Addison. Oh my God, she's like the goddess of wow. Um, she's just amazing, an amazing person. She's a five-time Bram Stoker winner, and she just befriended me and encouraged me. And again, it's like a team of individuals and experts in the field of science fiction and horror that I would not be where I am today had I not met them and listened to them and sat down with them and interacted with them. So I got to give props to all of them. Nancy Holder, who did the Buffy series, she was really cool. She did a blurb for me on my nonfiction book called Lord of the Flies: Fitness for Writers. And I mean, I just wouldn't be where I am today. So I'm very, very grateful to those individuals who've helped me along the path.
Writing always seems a very isolating job, and it definitely is at times. And when you first start, you are dead alone and out in the abyss of nothingness. But as you get into it, you realize that it's much more of a community, and editors, publishers, publicists, cover designers, and Miranda and I, we talk beyond the world of writing, that you can't really get anywhere in life without a mentor. There's very few things you can do in life where someone hasn't done it first or something similar. I don't know if you can tell by my decor, but I'm a teacher, right? And a lot of new teachers in the building this year. It's so nice to try to pass on whatever tiny nuggets of wisdom I might have, even if it's just, hey, it's almost June. Kids are crazy. You keep chocolate in this drawer right here. That's how you're going to survive. But just, it's so nice to hear that people will pass along whatever information they need, or whatever information they have. It's just it's just uplifting.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I got to give you kudos because I taught in middle school. I taught middle school in Hempstead, New York for a little over a decade. And then I was an associate director of education for the Civil Learning Center. And I was a director of a few different programs in Hempstead. And so for me, just being with really I love eighth graders. I worked with sixth graders, seventh graders, high schoolers, but eighth grade was my favorite. And just working with those 13-year-olds, that also kind of like in a way, those experiences helped me, um, you know, develop the themes that I have in the young adult books that I write. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't had those, that decade of experience in the classroom. And I have the utmost respect for all teachers because boy, do we get it. We
I
get
I taught middle school for over a decade too. Team sixth grade, but and now I'm in with the littles, the 1-2s, and I thought middle school was rough, and now I'm like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Now some days middle school's easy. I want to go back to the teenagers some days.
You know what? I laugh. I say I lived in the teenage body. Like my mentality was an eighth grader for probably a decade. Before we like leave Heather Graham too far behind, I just want to say that her performance in Austin Powers was an integral part of my upbringing. Like she was too perfect. But anyways, back to eighth graders. I absolutely can't agree with you more, Nzondi, because your hormones are massively changing during those years. And when you have all that chemical creation and reaction happening inside of you, hello, creativity.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because they're at 13, they're at the age where they're starting to become independent, but at the same time they're still very dependent on, adult, guidance. So it's a great age to kind of to tap into their lives and help them move along their journeys.
Oh,
I used
totally.
to always I used to always say to my students, experience no, exposure plus experience equals appreciation. And
Yes.
my goal was to just kind of expose them to all types of different things in their life. I taught a lot of at-risk kids, and it was my goal to expose them to all different types of things and stories, because I was an English teacher, and so they could appreciate like an old golden pond, and they could appreciate Star Wars, And I wanted them to write all these different kind of things that weren't necessarily things that they experienced themselves. I knew what they experienced. I wanted them to just grow their imagination. So it was a wonderful age to really tap into that and kind of help, mold that for them.
Okay, no, Miranda has a question waiting, but I'm gonna slide in. I have to. Got to slide in a story. So I do teach the littles, but I have one period a day where I teach the seventh and eighth graders, and there was two boys, and they were starting getting a little twitchy. And I said, "You guys need a brain break, a movement break. Take this to the office and come back, and that'll give you a break." They're like, "Sure," but then they were gone for like half an hour, and I found them in the gym playing basketball. I was like, "What are you guys doing?" They're like, "Mrs. Green, we are experiencing life."
I love that.
I was like, "Okay, come." In 5. I don't, they're like, "We're only young once. We got to do it." I was like, "All right."
And it's great when you take a chance on children like that. I used to take the toughest kids in my classroom, the roughest, toughest, the most feared, the thugs, and I would say, you know what? Now your responsibility is to water my plants. I'm not watering any plants, Mr. Hall. I'm like, now when you get the chance to water plants, guess what? You can walk out the classroom anytime you want. I'll leave that up to you. And just the eyebrows would kind of, burrow with that, and they would be like, okay. And giving them that type of responsibility, that break, that mental break from that being tough, doing something that was totally different, was it helped my entire class because they were happy.
I can't agree with you more. It helps everybody. Those choices help everybody involved. Now, I want to talk about what brain breaks, mental breaks look like for you. So, outside of writing and creating, what do you get up to? What makes you actual human outside of writing spectacular creations?
Thing. You mean besides like the peach cobbler and the donuts I eat? You mean besides that?
Oh, that is including that.
I actually just finished. I just ate some Boston Market, and yeah, so I love eating. But I think a lot of my mental breaks are really, honestly, I love to work out. So I started working out when I turned 41 when I started working out. That was 14 years ago. And I had a pop belly. I had a 38-inch waist. And it was when my niece said to me, Ace, you have bigger breasts than I do. That was it. That was it. And I started working out. And so I love running. I love the gym. It has become part of my lifestyle. So and it's kind of like a meditation when I'm running, when I'm jogging outside. I think about my stories. And another mental break I do, which is so weird, I think, is on my way to work. Because I work now, my day job is I'm a stand-in. So like I work as a stand-in, which is kind of like a stunt man, but I don't do the stunts. And I stand in for the actors. while the camera and the lighting set up the scene. So I've worked on a lot of different shows, the Star Wars shows, Mandalorian shows, which was phenomenal. And I just finished Bel Air, the first season. And so on the way to work, I turn my radio off and I just drive like a half hour in silence. And that mental break allows me to write my stories in my head. And I love that. I just, I need that so much. So yeah, those are some of the things I do.
I took two things away from that. So you said 41. I have then 6 months till I have to start working. And then the other thing I took away was just giddiness because Star Wars. But okay, I got 6 months and 2 weeks, and then I gotta get at it. Okay, I'll write that down.
Okay, first of all, running, being meditative. Yes. Any runner out there, it is so meditative. I ran the marathon with my dad a few years ago. And, marathons are really big and they're exciting and there's lots of people cheering you on. But I trained by myself for a year. So he's like elbowing me every 30 seconds. He's going, hey, look at that sign over there. Hey, look at that. They're passing out beer over there. And I was just like, bro, let me run. Like, just, I love you, but like, let me run. So that defeats the whole purpose of a marathon. I understand. But I can agree with you more that if you are thinking of running and you have a creative mind, dude, just do it. It makes a huge difference.
It does. I agree. Yeah. Yeah. It's been wonderful. Yeah. And yeah, I mentioned peach cobbler because people call me Peachy because I love peach cobbler so much. Everyone knows I love peach cobbler. So if you make a great peach cobbler, let me know. I'll be more than happy to come over and have some.
I think a few people are going to take you up on that. So I'm just saying.
I would. It's almost peach season in rainy Manitoba, Canada. I don't know when's peach season, but we can make a peach season.
That's right.
I don't know how to segue away from peach cobbler, so I'm just gonna spring to the next question. So usually I ask people why they write YA because I'm a YA author. I know my answer, but I think you've already answered that. So I'm gonna tweak it a little bit and say, why horror? We have all these genres. We have, westerns. We have romance. We have I love fantasy. Why the horror genre? Did it pick you or did you pick it?
Woo! See, you answered the question. It picked me. Um, Ever since I was a little kid, I've been, enamored with the creature from the Black Lagoon, Godzilla, Dracula, Abbott and Costello meets, Frankenstein. I mean, I love all of those kind of stories. But I think the real reason why I write horror is because I've had so much trauma and pain in my life. And that darkness inside of my life that I've lived, it allows me to to uh, to tap into my characters. Like the book I'm writing now, every single one of my characters have such an emotional, painful past, and I feel like that helps me relate to the readers because I don't think that anyone has ever lived has not gone through some kind of pain or trauma or experiences which to them might be the worst ever in the world. Each one of us have our own different tolerance for pain. And it's funny, I was talking to someone the other day and I said, it seems to me like a lot of comedians, they're so ha 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 ha, but when you know them in real life, they're like very serious and dark. And it seems like a lot of horror people that I met, most of my friends, are so cheerful and happy and go lucky. But um, I think it's when you learn how to transfer or translate that pain into the writing and your plots that you can really come up with some interesting and relatable subjects and characters. So I think horror kind of picked me, and it's in my DNA, man.
That definitely makes sense. Obviously, I don't write horror, but I don't think fantasy or dark fantasy is that far a leap from the horror genre. And they always there's a phrase, write what you know. And I'm like, well, I've never met a dragon, so that's gonna be hard. But for horror writers, fantasy writers, science fiction writers, we've all experienced loss or fear or pride or whatever it is, and it's really the emotions that translate into the story. It's not, we haven't all met a vampire that I'm aware of, but you can still write those stories and make them very realistic and nitty gritty and just get those emotions across. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, but what is a vampire? But someone who drains you of your energy, of your blood. How many people have we met in our lives that drain us of our, oh my God, oh, da, and they drain you, and they're like, I think zombies are metaphorical for society and the way that people um, they don't stand up for themselves. They just do whatever, they're told. And vampires are metaphors for the lust and the seductiveness and the people who drain us of everything that makes us human. So I think.
Absolutely, the
Yeah.
metaphor part of it. Yeah. The
Then
dragons,
I've never thought of that before. The metaphors from a zombie and a vampire perspective, and I cannot agree with you more. Okay, sorry, giddy moment.
we just blew Miranda's mind.
Seriously, my mind
get
is
that.
blown.
I
I
get
love
that.
it.
And the same thing happens in the fantasy genre with, wizards, that idea you want someone wiser than you, you're seeking knowledge, and that's definitely all part of it. For you, what elements make a good horror story? I mean, yes, we can have those creatures and something, but I have a feeling based on what I've talked, our conversation so far, I have a feeling of a deeper insight into what exactly makes up a horror story.
Yeah, I think the number one tangent is fear, and to play on how people's fears affect their decisions. You know, so like an Alfred Hitchcock, from the ordinary man, you know, to Clive Barker. You know, how does this particular fear, this fear of this person, this fear of this happening, this fear of death, this fear, how does this particular fear affect this character, and what does that character do? When you get some people in a situation where their back is up against the wall, they do some of the craziest things. And I think if you can, horror, I think horror is all about trying to kind of, come with different types of themes that play on what people would do when they're in a situation where they're very frightened. And I mean, I love it. The scare is beautiful. I love it.
Well, all writing is that what if premise, right? What if two people were destined to be in love, but obstacles got in the way? What if, like, the dragon appeared again? Darn that dragon, right? That's the joy and thrill of writing, and then you get to just take that path and see where the story takes you. Are you the kind of author that knows from the minute they start writing how it's going to end, or are you kind of like, wonder what's going to happen next?
Okay, almost every single written interview that I've done, I'm asked, "What is your process?" Or, "Do you have the same process for each book?" And I don't, I guess I do know what a lot of other authors do, but my process is kind of like, I guess, if someone has had a child before, I've raised two boys, and, you would think that everything that you teach the oldest one, you can apply all of those things to the youngest one. And they're so different. They respond to different stimuli. This one likes cake. This one it's just they're all so different. And for me, that's like a story. The story is a baby, and each baby that I, that is born, has a whole different experience. And my process is so different for each once. I think the first novel I wrote, I knew the ending. This novel that I'm writing now, I have no idea what the next chapter is. I have no idea. I start out with an idea. Okay, I'm gonna do this, and then that, and then this is going to happen, and it's going to end that way. I wrote the ending a long time ago. That ending, I wrote my ending 3 times already, and those endings are trash. They're different because my characters have told me a different story, and the circumstances, and then again, it's also, for me, it's what I've been exposed to, what books I've read, what old stories, what old movies I've seen, what TV series that I've seen. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I've been watching the Vampire Diaries series. I finally forced myself to watch this. And one thing I noticed about the Vampire Diaries series is, oh my God, they make up and break up every other episode. It's like, oh my God. And it's like, but it's this human reaction of, I can't take it. I can take it again. Oh, I love you. I miss you. And every single episode, there's some kind of party or gathering, and these kind of things I'm watching and I'm like, wow, she's really strong for her man. She really goes to bat for her man. Okay, I see how this worked with this characterization. Oh, the brother's really a jerk. Okay, but they still dig him. They still,
Okay.
yeah, they still let him do his thing. But he's a jerk and he's a killer. But they still kind of hang out with him. And I'm like, that's like a lot of people in life that you meet. You know,
Yep.
uh, people that you grew up with. They could be the biggest, baddest people in the world, but because you have all these experiences together in the trenches, you still love them. No matter how bad they are. It's so. Yeah, each one of my stories, I almost went off on a whole different tangent, but each one of my stories is different. I don't know what the ending is. Or if I do know what the ending is, it changes by the time I get there. So,
Each novel takes its own journey. But there's a meme where it's like a reader holding a book and it's like, "Oh, I wonder what happens in the next chapter." And then the author at home being like, "I wonder what happens in the next chapter." And some days I'm like, like when you write a really great cliffhanger and you're like, "No one's ever going to figure out how they're going to get out of this." I got to figure out how they're going to get out of this, and there's a moment of panic.
yes,
Woo!
there have been times when I had one particular killer, and I'm driving with the music off, and I'm like, "Oh my God, he's not the killer. She's the killer. Why? I didn't even know that. That makes so much sense." And then I change it, and a different character becomes the one, you know, that is, targeting or preying on all these different people or victims. So yeah,
I don't know about Miranda, but all my characters just a little bit feral. I'm like, "You're gonna do this," and they're like, "We're gonna do that," and I'm like, "All right."
I like the each story is like a different child, like relatability. I think some days my child loves this, and then the next day she doesn't. And who knows what we have down on the road for the childbearing process, but my book process is exactly like you. Like my first series, I knew exactly what was going into each book. I knew exactly what the characters were going to do. And then this next series that I'm working on, it will be another 3 books. I have no flipping idea. When I start writing a story, we were in a train and with my main character and her grandma, and she peed herself or whatever. There's a lot into it. And I went to my husband and I said, "How did I get here? And how do I leave here?" He looked at me. He's like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Well, if this was me, what would we do?" And he just face palmed and he was just like, "You're smart. You can figure it out. There's a glass of wine and there's a bottle of wine if you need it, but you're smart. Figure it out." I figured it out.
that's great. I love it. Yeah. So we're alike in that matter that each story or each series, is a different child.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Speaking of, different books, different series, I can see the time ticking away. I'm starting to panic. So, can you tell us a little bit about your latest release and the premise of that book?
Yeah, so the latest release is called Lipstick Asylum. That was not the original title. The original title was Lipstick Zombies. I thought it was a great title. The publisher, Kate Jones, hated that title. She hated it. She hated it. And so I was forced to come up with something different. And I like that when someone kind of, you know, they don't make it easy for you. They make it a challenge because it makes you work harder. And when I thought about it and I thought about the theme and what was going on and some of the twists in the story, Asylum really felt like it was the perfect title, Lipstick Asylum. Thank you. And so the story basically is about a young girl, a young teenage girl who is, tormented by the loss of her boyfriend. He's missing, and just the things that teenagers go through. And she's struggling to kind of understand her parents. She feels like her parents have abandoned her. And so just the type of things that teenagers go through. And her friends, they go on this trip, and lo and behold, on the trip, a lot of danger starts happening, and she has to kind of get out of her own way in order to help, the mission of this case. And basically, she and her friends have a company called Scream Teens, Teens, and they raise the dead for police investigations, for entertainers. They do it for entertainment, and so they were hired as entertainment on this cruise to raise the dead for a famous author who wanted to raise her husband, and they had no idea that the woman actually had ulterior motives for raising her husband from the dead. And when they do that, all heck breaks loose. But yeah, it's basically a story about self-empowerment and how a young lady has to kind of get out of her own way and overcome some of her own struggles in order to become the self-empowered hero that, I feel like I grew up with all women, so I feel like all women are. And so yeah, so it's a really fun, cool, fast-paced story with a lot of martial arts, a lot of action, a lot of zombies, and a lot of twists. So it's a lot of fun. It was a
It
lot of fun
seems
writing it.
it seems to match what you said before the show. You were talking about your stories. You wanted to show the complexities of the young adult life, all their unique struggles, and throw in some vampires and stuff. So it just seems to match that quote exactly.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, and one of my favorite series is The Walking Dead. When The Walking Dead first started, the first few seasons, it really wasn't about zombies. It was about the people. The people were more dangerous than the zombies were. And I like that approach, because you can really create a lot of different stories about everyone's past and the struggles that they have. And then you sprinkle a little bit of, you know, a little bit of the undead on top of that to give it a nice little, a nice little horror taste. So yeah, I like that.
That is the absolute perfect note to end on. So we've intrigued our viewers and our listeners. They want to bring you peach cobbler. They want to find your books. They want to follow you. Where do they go? Where do they go to connect with you online?
I think I'm probably one of the worst people to answer that correctly because I just simply say, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but I say just Google Ace Antonia Hall. I have a pretty cool presence on the internet, and you Google Ace Antonia Hall, or you Google Nzondi and put author, and you'll find my books. They pop right up. There are even like a ton of sites that have found quotes in my book and have quoted me. That's like you just put Ace Antonio Hall quotes, and there are like 30 different sites that have my quotes up. And I mean, it's just like, but if you want to go straight to Instagram, you just type in Ace Antonio Hall or Nzondi, and that'll pop up. I have a couple of different uh uh profiles, but it's the one. Which one is it now? It's the one where I'm like I have the red evil eyes. It's like a cartoon. And then or you can go to TikTok and put in Nzondi3, or you can go to what's the other one? Twitter, and put in at Nzondi3, and yeah, you'll find me. and follow me and hit me up.
As I did research before the show because I'm not allowed near any of the technology. That's Miranda's department. So we did all the searches, and yeah, it's absolutely totally easy to find you, and lots of stuff out there. And Miranda will put all those links in the show description. So we just want to say a big thank you for coming on our show today. The more we interview people, the more we're starting to think maybe this needs to be a 4-hour show instead of 30 minutes. But unfortunately, we are out of time. So big thank you to you for being here. And then a big thank you to all our viewers and all our listeners. And a shout out to our show sponsors, Creative Edge Publicity and the Writers Library Network. So our Writer Corner Network. We changed. Oh, well, Miranda will edit that part out. Big thank you to our sponsors, our viewers, our listeners, and to you.